Hey, this ThinkerThunker. Welcome to this most epic of all videos concerning Bigfoot that has surely been almost 60 years in the making now. We are going to, in this video, once and for all, find out who was lying. Was it Roger Patterson, or was it his good buddy, alleged, Bob Hieronymus, or however you pronounce his name? But first, take a look at this article here. This is posted on Smithsonian Magazine. That's part of the Smithsonian Institute, which was created by the U.S. government to further knowledge. So listen to some of this knowledge furthering here. Why do so many people still want to believe in Bigfoot? Hey, Smithsonian, I can answer that for you. It's because there are people like me who've had encounters with big, furry, non-human giants and had our lives profoundly changed forever. Another reason is that the majority of the world believes that the differences between these two here can never, ever be known. And I've now come up with a way to show those differences in literally a fraction of a second. I call it proportional DNA, for those of you who don't know, and I'm going to use pDNA or proportional DNA to, for once and for all, prove whether Roger Patterson was the liar or was Bob H. here the liar. Let's go put this thing to rest once and for all. Okay, two quick facts just to make sure we're all on the same page. I've got a lot of new patrons and a lot of new YouTube members. Welcome to the tribe, gang. You're here at an amazing time. But just in case you're not as familiar with my proportional DNA system, I've done a search for hands in pockets to prove to you that no matter the gender, no matter the ethnicity, we all have arms that are just long enough that our hands fit nicely into our pockets. And it doesn't matter if we're 4'8" or 7'8", it's the same. And even the late Queen Elizabeth, hello, can attest to that fact. We see her arms are just long enough that her hands fit into her pockets, proving that humans have torsos and arms the same relative length. The second simple fact you need to understand is the late Queen's legs here are every bit as long as Miss Macy Curran's legs are, proportionally speaking. And it's the same for every normal, typical, average adult human on the planet. We all have the exact same body proportions Macy does. Our torso and arms are the same relative length, with legs a whopping 30% longer. And there is not another species on the planet, none of the larger primates or predators, that have body proportions even remotely close to us humans. And that's important because body proportions are finally the key to proving the difference between humans and forest giants. And there's also not another species on the planet, including humans, that has body proportions even remotely close to Paddy's or any of the other large furry giants I've measured. Okay, let me get these skeletons out of the way. I have pulled Bob H., his image in on the left, if you couldn't tell, and whatever it was Roger Patterson filmed over here on the right. I've pulled those images into a 3D program so that I could use human skeletons. They don't make 3D Bigfoot skeletons because nobody's ever had a Bigfoot skeleton to model one from. So I have to modify these skeletons. But I do this so that when I'm looking at big furry figures or any figure, I can line up a skeleton to make sure that when I measure these, that I'm getting as close as possible to all the major body joints. All right. Now, one thing that should be really telling to you is that Bob's skeleton over here, it's just a good old human 3D skeleton straight off the rack. I didn't have to stretch or do anything. It matches Bob's body perfectly. But Patty's skeleton over here, on the other hand, I had to radically transform this thing just to make it line up with Patty's image. I had to stretch its torso out a whopping 20% longer to make it fit Patty's image. And I had to stretch its arms out 20% longer than a normal human's arms to make the arms fit. And then I had to shrink Patty's skeleton legs down a full 10% shorter than a normal human legs, just so that this skeleton would reasonably line up with Patty. Okay, and one last thing before we measure these two, I need to point out something Bob and his suit maker did that I'm sure they thought was very clever. Look how Bob in the suit, how his hand comes down quite a bit longer, quite a bit further down. So they thought that all they had to do was make a suit with the arms a little bit longer and they could fool the world. Had they only bought and read my book Solved, say about 30 years in advance, they would have known that just extending the forearm wasn't enough, because now the arm doesn't bend in the center. They should have extended the whole arm, and they should have also extended the torso 20%. But the thing is, you can't extend a human's torso or arms 20% and them still be alive. You also can't shrink their legs 10% and them still be able to walk around. All right, now it's time to play everybody's favorite game, swapping skeletons. And grab Patty's, bring it on over. And now I'll try to get the heels lined up as close as I can. And now watch. When I get Patty's skeleton hip up where it needs to be, look at the legs. Now it's tippy-toeing and still aren't long enough. And we know why. Because Patty's legs, proportionally speaking, are 10% shorter than a human. And that 10% shorter might as well be a million miles when talking about the differences between the body proportions between two upright species. But watch what else is weird. Look, if I just move it over to the side a little, look how tall Patty's torso is. So now I would have to start shrinking it down a full 20% before Patty's skeleton would finally match up with Bob. And then I would have to start stretching out all of the leg bones. There, that's 100%. And then I would have to do this 100%. And then I would have to do all the same changes to this human skeleton in reverse to make it fit Patty. I would have to stretch its torso out, something about like that. I would have to shrink its legs 10%. I would have to stretch its torso and arms out a full 20%. Now, do you see what I mean when I say body proportions don't lie? And now do you see what I mean when I say the difference between our proportions and their proportions are radically different? I mean, look at this poor thing. Look at a Patty leg on the left and a human leg on the right. And the proportional changes just keep changing as we go up the body. And I'm sure if we could ever get close enough, we would find that the hands and the feet and everything out to the smallest digit are all profoundly different, proportionally speaking. All right, it is time to see who was the liar here. And I have measured Bob, measured his body proportions, and Patty's. Can you look at these measurement bars and see if their body proportions are exactly the same? Because if they're not exactly the same, that's going to be a problem for Bob. And now I have taken all of Bob's body proportions, his torso, his arms, and his legs, and put them in this bar chart. And I've done the same with Patty. And now I'm going to put a black background up and hide the rest so that we can focus on just their body proportions. Now look hard. This debate has been raging for almost 60 years. If Bob was telling the truth that he was wearing the patty suit, then the body measurements on the left are going to be exactly the same as the body measurements on the right. Are they the same? No, they're not. Are they kind of close to the same? No, they're not. They are radically and profoundly different. Bob has a torso and arms the same relative length with legs a whopping 30% longer. Patty on the right has a torso and arms that are much longer than Bob's with legs that are the same length. Not 30% longer, not 20% longer, not 10% longer, 0% longer than the torso and the arms, proving that whatever it was Roger Patterson filmed, it could not possibly have been a human. Because you can't put on a monkey suit and suddenly your legs are going to shrink down 30% and yet still be able to walk. Impossible. And no, they didn't have CGI or anything like that back in 1967. So our test here, our proportional DNA test, proves that Patty over here on the right is 100% a non-human species with a torso, arms, and legs, all the same relative length. And our proportional DNA test proves for the first time in almost 60 years that Bob was a big, fat liar when he claimed he was wearing a patty suit in Roger Patterson's film. And just to prove quickly that all humans, all normal, typical adult humans, have the exact same body proportions, plus or minus tiny percentages, here is Shaquille O'Neal, 7'1" tall basketball legend. In the center is Asuka Teramoto, Japanese gymnast at 4'8", and the late great Andre the Giant, who was 7'4" tall. Look at all three of them. Look at Shaq's over on the far left. Torso and arms, same length, same relative length. Legs 30% longer. Same with Asuka. Same with Andre the Giant. All humans have or share the exact same body proportions. And here are Bob's body proportions that I just measured. The figure on the left matches these others perfectly. All right, I'm going to wrap up on this. When I say that proportional DNA is scientific, measurable, repeatable proof, by repeatable, I mean anybody in the world who cares to do this can measure and put together a chart and see for themselves. And now it has happened. The other day, one of my patrons, his name is YSTD, he left me a comment in the poll and said, "Hey, ThinkerThunker, I used your proportional DNA, and it took me all of about 10 minutes. This is his measurements. This is what YSTD did. He measured out Bob here. He built himself a little proportional DNA chart and got essentially the exact same results I did, proving to himself that Bob has a torso and arms the same relative length with legs 30% longer, which makes Bob here 100% human." So when people in the past have said, when it comes to photographs and footage, we can never know the truth, that is no longer true. The world has now changed. We now have an image-based species identification system that can let us prove 100% what a figure is, as long as there's just enough there to let us measure, say, a torso and a thigh, or a upper arm and a shin. You let me see that or others now, and we can tell you 100% what species it is. So thank you, YSTD, for confirming my findings. So now the half a century old debate is over between Roger Patterson and Bob H. We now have simple scientific measurable proof that Bob H. was lying, that he was not wearing the Patty suit. And more than that, we have proof that Patty in that footage could not possibly have been a human. That's major. So when you all are going out into the world now, or when you have friends or family or coworkers who try to say, yeah, they proved Bigfoot is all a joke. It's a man in a monkey suit. Now you have proof on your side. Send them a link to my book Solved. Send them a link to my last video where I introduced proportional DNA to the world. Challenge them, educate them, tell them about proportional DNA. We now have proof on our side that the Smithsonian and the Washington Post and the thousands of other news agencies and networks who've done articles just like this, condescending articles, we've got proof you guys were wrong. I mean, incredibly wrong. There was jaw-dropping evidence right in front of our eyes all along. Science should have solved this problem a half a century ago, but science did not solve this problem. But it is solved now. And that is special thanks to you, my patrons, and my YouTube members for supporting me while I did all this research and came to develop proportional DNA. Thank you all so much. We have now changed the world together. I hope that feels amazing to you. All right, everybody, take care.